Hi everyone, Mrs. Collier here with a little bit of history. We're continuing with Chapter 9, Lesson 1. We're going to move on to Part 2 today, and we're still talking about the Civil War. And if you remember, in Monday and Tuesday, we were talking about the two sides that were involved with the war. Anybody remember what they were? Yep, the Confederate Army and the Union Army. Anybody remember where the Union Army was? Yep, up north. And the Confederate Army, that means, was down south. Absolutely. And we also looked a little bit at the Underground Railroad, and I hope you guys had a chance to look at some of the myths that were behind the Underground Railroad in the extension activities and why it played such an important role at this time with the people that were involved with the Civil War. And then looking at Abraham Lincoln, who was a key figure in this particular war in America. And again, he was one of our presidents of the United States during this time. So we're going to continue with page 233, entitled The War Continues. And again, you want to make sure that you are thinking about, as you're reading, who is involved, what is happening, where it's happening, and when it's happening. Okay, let's begin. In January 1863, President Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation. To emancipate is to set free. A proclamation is an official order. So this is an official order to set free. And we're going to assume at this point it's the people who were enslaved at this time. This order said that all enslaved people in the Confederacy would be forever free. However, it did not free enslaved people in the 4 slave states still in the Union because he needed their support in the war effort. So there were a few Union states that did not agree to this proclamation because they needed support during this time. In addition, the proclamation stated that African Americans could join the Union forces. That means they could have joined the army at that point to become a soldier instead of a slave. At the beginning of the war, they had not been allowed to join. Nearly 200,000 African Americans volunteered to serve in the Union Army. Confederate General Robert E. Lee decided to invade the North to try to bring the war onto Union soil, meaning they wanted to bring the war up north so that the South had more of an advantage. Lee's army marched north along Virginia's Shenandoah Valley into Pennsylvania and met Union troops at Gettysburg. General George Meade of Pennsylvania commanded the Union troops. On July 1st, 1863, the two armies began a battle that shattered the quiet of the woods and fields around Gettysburg for 3 days. On July 3rd, Confederate General George Pickett led 15,000 soldiers against Union troops led by General Winfield Scott Hancock, a Pennsylvanian. The attack, known as the Pickett's Charge, failed. Lee withdrew his battered army. The Battle of Gettysburg was a turning point of the Civil War. Afterward, the Union began to gain the upper hand, meaning they started to become a little bit more powerful at this point. They were starting to feel like they were winning the war. You will read more about the Battle of Gettysburg in the Here and There feature on page 240. We're actually going to put that in the learning extension part. About 50,000 troops from both sides were killed or wounded at the Battle of Gettysburg. To honor the Union soldiers who died there, the United States government created a cemetery at Gettysburg. President Lincoln's dedication speech came became known as the Gettysburg Address. It was only about 2 minutes long, but it became famous for the feelings it had expressed. Now, there's a lot going on in this section here. There's a lot that we could kind of expand on and talk about more. Uh, Again, you're going to look a little bit more at what the Emancipation Proclamation was all about in this particular section. Gettysburg, the Battle of Gettysburg, such a huge and dramatic turning point for the Civil War, and it happened right here in Pennsylvania. Gettysburg is out in west of where we're at right now. If you ever get a chance to go visit, it's super, super fun out there. You get to see a lot of different historical sites. They actually have a reenactment of a battlefield right there in Gettysburg of what that battle was like out there. My parents actually go very, very often. My father is a huge Civil War fan, and I would love if we ever had the chance for him to sit here and tell you all that he knows about the Civil War. It's just, he knows so much because he loves to learn about it. But one more question I have for you is, why did the Emancipation Proclamation not free enslaved people in the 4 slave states in the Union? So there were 4, and we talked about that a little bit. So there were 4 slave states that did not enact this proclamation. And why? Why do you think? Give you a second to think about that. Okay, we said that in the beginning, and it was because the Union, which is the Army of the North, still needed their support in the war effort. Okay, so that's why these 4 states didn't free any enslaved people, because they needed their support. Okay, so let's flip over now to the next page, page 234. And 234 is talking about supporting the troops, what that looked like during this time. Because remember, there were lots of troops that were wounded and killed. So what was that like? What was that? I can't even imagine what that would have been like for all those who were in the armies, not just fighting the war, but those who were supporting it. The nurses, the doctors, all those that were taking care of these soldiers and their families. So let's look at page 234, supporting the troops. Pennsylvanians helped the Union war effort in many ways. The state's factories produced many of the Union's cannons. Farmers grew food to supply the soldiers. Women sewed uniforms. Many bandages, nursed wounded soldiers, and ran family farms while their husbands and sons were away. About 8,600 African Americans from Pennsylvania volunteered to serve or enlisted, that means to sign up for, in the Union Army. So you can tell there was a lot of people that were supporting this particular war because they believed in what it was about. The Civil War, again, was about the idea of slavery, how the North did not want slavery to happen or to be a part of their world, but the South did. They believed that it was a valuable part of what this country was about. So that's why the war actually started, because of the idea of slavery. So I want you to, as you finish up this particular lesson, I want you to read the attached document on the Emancipation Proclamation and check out the picture. There's an actual picture of the real historical document there. And when you're done, I want you to go over to the Lesson 1 Google form, fill it out. You might have to refer back to Monday and Tuesday's reading, because there's going to be questions from Monday and Tuesday and today and tomorrow. And don't forget to click Submit. And then remember to go to the Learning Extension section for more information about this particular lesson of the chapter. And then next week, we're going to finish up this chapter by looking at Lesson 2 and looking a little bit more at the Civil War. Hope you enjoy, guys. Take care.